Welcome, everybody. It's lovely to see people not in rectangles and squares. It's so lovely to see real people. And I appreciate some of you at home are looking at squares and screens. So I'm sorry I can't see you. And tonight we've got a lovely panel of people, but we really want to share with you. I think there's been lots of talking at, and I hope tonight will be about talking with and sharing. And there's moments for you, if you feel comfortable, to share something with the person beside you. So I thought tonight we have the Coat of Hopes, and we'll hear more about them later. But one of the powerful songs from their piece is "Ask me what my name is, and ask me what is my purpose." So I'll tell you what my name is. My name is Harley. I'm a storyteller, singer, psychotherapist. I work with children, young people, and adults. And my purpose is to discover more stories and connect with everybody's heart and transform something that needs to shift. So maybe together we can all create some magic. So shall we do a line thing, or are you going to jump in?
Jump in.
Jump in.
But not me, because if I jump in, that's the start of a line thing. So
okay, so not you.
Not me.
Hi.
Okay, I'll go for it. Hi, everyone. My name is Zainab. I'm originally from Morocco, and I'm currently based in Berlin. I'm 20 years old, and my purpose in life, oh, that's a really heavy question. So I'm a climate justice activist. I believe in the power of communities to create change in life. I'm today representing Force of Nature. I'm the community lead at Force of Nature, and we're an international nonprofit working at the intersection of the climate crisis and mental well-being. We believe that through mobilizing mindsets, we can take action and we can build power in our vulnerability and by being human simply. So that's me.
Beautiful.
I'll jump in. I'm Tanya, and I'm a theatre maker, and I'm also an SGI member, a Buddhist member. Recently, I feel that it's the connection of the Camino. I've been walking to Glasgow. I think I walked 337 miles to get here from Nottingham. Do you know what? I've been waiting to say that. And gathering stories along the way. But I think my purpose is to be a working creative process. And I want to do the work I need to do on myself to be the change that I want to see.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Paul, that leaves you or me.
Yeah, go on, Maureen.
Well, I'm not going to jump in because I feel like I'm just with such amazing people, so I'm going to tiptoe in. My name's Maureen. I'm Director of Interfaith Scotland, and I'm also Baha'i by religion. And my purpose, I think probably recently my purpose is to become more fully human, more fully really an authentic human being, and to promote love and unity. I think that will be my purpose, to promote love and unity.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Gorgeous.
Right. So, hello. My name is Paul Roseby, and I have the privilege of running an organisation called the National Youth Theatre, and we were at COP26 this afternoon with elements of pieces of work created by young people, led by young people, around the truth of eco-anxiety, eco-anger, but splattered with lots of humour. My purpose in life has often been humour, at the cost, I think, of quite a few things. So I won't be flippantly humorous tonight. You'll all be delighted to know. Maybe that was just me being flippant as well, I don't know, but I don't think I will. My purpose is to professionally empower young people through the medium of theatre to tell the truth and to become better citizens. And currently we're focusing on a lot of work around how we can tell the truth around the climate crisis. So I like to fix things. I try and fix everything. And I'm currently trying to fix myself as well, so it's nice to be here.
We also have Anne. We're just going to wave. Because Anne's going to share a bit later. What really struck me in looking all the sort of the Twitter feeds and the news that were kind of guided to, the stories that were guided to read, but one of them really caught my attention, and it was a story from the leader of the Pacific Islands who was addressing the world leaders, and he told an old story of his people about the boy who kept growing. And he kept growing, and the islanders fed him, and he ate everything. And the land, the vegetation, everything was going, the fish in the sea, and the animals, he ate everything, and he kept growing, and he kept growing, and he kept growing. And then he started to eat the islanders. So they were losing their family members, and they had to take action. And the Pacific leader said, "You are the boy who keeps growing, and we are on an island waiting." So from the Pacific Islands, I want to tell and share a story from the Inuit communities. So in the Inuit people, this is one of their creation myths. And in the Inuit stories, Raven created the world. And Raven was part God and part bird, with a man inside. And Raven loved the world that he had made, but he didn't understand everything there was to know. He loved the mountains and the people and the creatures, and he was curious. He loved the snow. And one day, he went out in his kayak, out into the sea. And then he saw a great whale. Wow! And Raven wondered what it was like inside the whale. So he waited until the whale yawned. And he got his kayak into the whale's mouth. He tethered it to a bristle, and he walked inside the whale. He was impressed by the jawbone and the huge columns of ribs. And then he heard a beat. Boom, 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 boom. And maybe you can help me. Boom, 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 boom. And then he saw a girl dancing. Boom, 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 boom. And she was beautiful. And Raven said to her, "I am Raven. I made the world. Will you come away with me?" And the girl, who had thin skin coming from her ankles and her wrists, which led to a great big heart, she said, "I am Spirit. I can't leave Whale, but you're welcome to keep me company." And Raven took off his headdress and his wings and became man. sat and watched. And he noticed that when the girl danced fast, ba-boom, 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 the whale soared and plowed through the ocean fast and fast like a torrent. And when the girl danced slowly, the whale was still and calm. And Raven loved this girl. And as man, he forgot what she had said. He was filled with desire. Grabbing his headdress and his wings, he swooped forward, grabbed the girl, and went through whale and up, up, up into the sky. And he looked down at whale thrashing about on the surface of the ocean. And he noticed the girl, who he was holding tight, grew smaller and smaller and smaller until she was gone. And Raven looked down at whale, lifeless, moving with the shifting waves. And Raven rode whale to the shore as the body was tossed onto the sand. And Raven remembered, spirit cannot be separated from heart, and all who live must die. And Raven wept tears that became streams that gently melted the ice of the tundra until the Alpilactunquat purple flowers began to blossom. And Raven danced round the body of the whale. And Raven danced and danced and danced until the snow geese had molted all their feathers and were still. And Raven sang. Raven sang until the sun rose 10 hands above the horizon. And these were the first tears, the first dance, and the first song of the healing. And the healing is not yet done. And Raven said that he would stay on earth as long as we remembered to let our spirits dance. And this Inuit story is offered as a blessing to you all. Thank you. So there were a few moments in there, and I wondered if this might be a lovely time for you to turn to your neighbour and just share with them something of like a fragment when maybe you were a child, when you suddenly felt this connection with something greater, that something was magic, that you were connected in a magical way. And while you're having these lovely chats and sharing fragments, Anne is going to share.
So when did you first feel that kind of, I don't know, spirit connection?
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you have managed to share fragments and glorious moments. And thank you so much, Anne. That was just delightful. So I was wondering what personal narrative propels you? I mean, what's a story? What's something that has really caught you and shaped the career path that you've made, or the decisions that you've made? Paul?
It's such a profound question, isn't it? And I really don't know how to answer it. But I do say this one thing. I always say you should be the story that you want to tell. And I don't think you really work out what story you want to tell until you get to a certain point in your life. So you only start realizing you're in a story until a certain gifted point. So what propels me into that understanding is pure honesty about how you feel. It's true emotion. It's very hard to find because we're so influenced by so many things that we're told to feel and be feel and normative and performative, you know. So to actually dig deep and to really be true about how you really feel is the beginning of the story that you want to tell and be. And that can take a lifetime of pain, of loss, of joy, of love, all those things. But I think we all have such a beautiful story to tell, and the story is us. I think the best story is our lives, really. And we must remember that, I think. It's so what propels me within that is hopefully telling my story one day. With jazz hands.
Yeah. Tap dancing. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't really answer your question, but did it answer? You didn't answer your question, did you? No. No.
I think what propels me is an optimism, and I was very lucky to be born with this, and I think it's one of my gifts of nature. But it's the belief that every aspect of life, but every person has the potential to fully realize themselves. And sometimes, you know, when you're meeting people who doubt themselves, and I doubt myself, I still know that underneath everything there is this inherent knowing that we are extraordinary and we have this force for change within us, both individually and collectively, to make anything happen, to come into being. So I think that's what propels me, and I'm also really nosy. I really like asking people questions and finding out things about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm really well. I didn't like people at all, and now I do. So you'll be glad to hear. And that was a kind of emerging, a coming out of the fear and the doubt, and there's something about in the Raven story that curiosity, not judgment. So if we remain curious, everything opens up. Whereas if we're judgmental, it's like we're putting walls down or defenses down. And Tanya mentioned force. You are a force. So that's your company as well, isn't it? It's the
Force of nature.
yes.
Yeah, we believe that young people are a force of nature, and that each and every one of us can be a force of nature as long as you believe in it, and that you trust in your own power and in your own connection to nature and your own connection to yourself. And something that we were talking about earlier is how change starts from within. So whenever we're talking, for example, about the climate crisis, we talk about how we need to do this and that, and we forget to check on ourselves. We forget to ask ourselves, how am I doing today? We forget to be vulnerable with one another and find that human connection with one another, and just be curious, because once you are curious, for example, with the climate crisis, a lot of things are happening around the world, and if you really want to learn about the climate crisis, it all starts with a question. It starts with, how are you today? Are you feeling good? What's happening around the world? It starts by having conversations with people who don't come from the same spaces as you do. It starts by being curious simply and being vulnerable with one another, and also being open to learning from one another, because I believe that there's power in our differences, and that each and every one of us have something to bring to the table, and that through our stories, because we all have a story, as everyone has touched upon, we all have a story and we all have a role to play. And if we believe in ourselves and we believe in those stories, I believe that that's where power is. And I believe that we're all storytellers. And we were having a conversation earlier, actually, when you asked about what brought you to your connection, and like where did you found that connection? And something that I failed to tell you about earlier is that when I was in Morocco, so I'm Moroccan, I was born and grew up in Morocco, and I got the chance to volunteer at 13 years old at a rural mountain region in Morocco. It's called Terdouin. And I was able to connect with younger girls my age. And unfortunately, that was a heartbreaking moment for me, because at 13 years old, I got to realize that the world isn't an unjust place, that we don't all have a privilege of having good things. And I realized that there's power also in knowing that you are privileged. So when I was 13 years old, during that volunteer project, I got to know girls who unfortunately couldn't go to school simply because they didn't have tap water. So they had to work 13 kilometers just to find water. And I realized that there's privilege in having tap water, in having a roof on top of your head, that I felt like we were living in alternate universes. And while I worried about my school grades, there are these little girls who are my age. They worry about a home, a safe home, just a safe space to call home, a safe place to sleep at night. And while I worried about the next 3 days, the next 5 years, while I dreamed of changing the world, there are these little girls who were my age. They worried about tonight, about where am I going to sleep? What am I going to drink? What am I going to eat? And I believe that through those stories, by listening to those stories, we are able to understand one another, and we are able to connect with one another, because at the end of the day, I believe that although we're all different in our own way, there's something that connects us all, is that we are all human, that we all share and aspire to do the same things. At the end of the day, we all share and aspire to achieve the same things, that we all seek happiness and we all seek the same things. And once we realize that behind the labels, behind these positions, behind the corporate jargon, behind it all, we're all human, and that's the most important part.
Thank you.
Gosh. I was sitting here thinking about the kind of what is it? What is the narrative? And I actually was thinking back to my childhood and how often things would kind of scare me. You know, I would think I was quite timid in a way. I don't feel so timid now, but I think I probably was. And a lot of things, even the stories that we got at Sunday school, you know, of Jesus on the cross and his suffering and all that, it kind of scared me, that sense of human suffering and what it meant to suffer. And as a child, some of that really vexed me. And as a young teenager, I became a Baha'i, which was quite an unusual thing to do because I'm from the Murray Coast, from Elgin, and this was the 1970s. But even there, you know, very quickly I started to read stories of the early Baha'is and, you know, their torture and imprisonment and all of those kind of things. And again, that really vexed me quite a lot, that idea that human beings could inflict pain on others and that there was suffering in the world. So I think I've always been on this journey to relieve suffering. But then, I also have a sense in myself that actually we grow a bit through suffering as well. That there's times in our lives when things are difficult, and we've been tested in all sorts of different ways, and then you see a whole growth thing happening. So I'm going to just very briefly, and I know he's watching just now live streaming, so he's going to be really embarrassed by this, but I want to tell just a quick little story of my husband and his ability incredible ability, I think. And he's helped me put some of this into context. As a little boy of 4, his mum one night came up to him and his brother and said, I'm leaving, but I promise I'll keep in touch. And she left. He was 4. And she didn't come back because his father wouldn't let her have any more contact with the children. And then I think coping with the grief of his wife walking out was quite violent. And I think that is probably a kind of a story maybe of the 50s and that kind of thing. So eventually Nick ended up being thrown out by his dad, and his mother, who was watching from the sides, found him, and they met for a couple of weekends in a cafe, and then she was knocked down by a car and killed. And he was taken to the funeral, and there at the funeral there was all these people. He didn't know who they were, and where were they from, what was their background, who were these people. And it turned out it was his extensive Jewish family, and his mother had actually come over to the UK as a young child, we think possibly in the kinder transport, and her parents had been murdered in the gas chambers. And so, Nick went through all the kind of things that a young man would go through, trying to cope with all this information and the type of childhood he had. But then at a certain point in his life, in his 20s, he found spirit. I think when you were talking about that disconnection from spirit and then finding it, and that, he found that in his faith and the Baha'i faith, but he himself transformed and used all that, I guess, all that he'd learned from his suffering to become an incredibly good human being. And it was really, I think, so there's something about using the good or the bad in your life, whatever comes your way, and how do you integrate that into yourself as a human being and go forward and do good in the world. So I think transforming suffering, transforming situations, and trying to make something positive out of it all. I think that might be my narrative, I hope.
That's beautiful.
One of them anyway.
Thank you so much.
It's really interesting. It's a beautiful story, and he must be a remarkable man. You're very lucky to have each other. Cherish the joy. Cherish the joy. Good. I'm sure
I think we cherish each other.
Yeah, good. That's
you're there.
But it's very interesting when you're happy, when you're in a state of happiness and equilibrium, you've got the things that you want. You tend not to listen so much to other people, or in fact yourself, because you're in a different state. You don't really start listening until you're actually not in a state of happiness, until you actually are challenged, until you might be victimized, or you're hurt, you're bruised physically or mentally, spiritually, and that's when the stories start. That's when you start to grow. You're absolutely right. That's when the change happens within. When the world is suffering, we realize we have to heal it, but we can't do it unless we listen to each other and also listen to yourself. It's a very difficult skill. And in theatre and acting, the best actors are people that can listen. That is what acting is. It's listening and then reacting. And that's how you get the truth in a performance. It's not then performative. So I think that's very interesting. Suffering is, can I say, is good for the soul, is good for listening. As long as you can be empowered with supportive friends and communities to make the difference and to grow from that, perhaps. Maybe. Yeah.
And share.
Exactly.
I think, there's the wonderful story in Buddhism of Indra's thread, that, the world is this tapestry and each of us is a different thread, and that at the joint of the threads running across is a jewel. And I think, what we've shared is when we share our vulnerability, that's when the hearts meet. That's
right.
the jewel of the connection and the mutuality, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's right.
And I think so many of us feel sometimes in the narrative about climate crisis, stop the climate chaos. We have to just start to really listen. And the cries have been, I brought my child to Tanya's house. I was looking for a bass player. I found myself in Nottingham, and my baby needed nurturing and needed to sleep and was wrapped up in a Greenham Common blanket. So you've been forever.
Wow.
It becomes, how can we not stand up for justice, for social justice, for equality? How can we not? And maybe that's the climate fury that can maybe break through some of these defense walls.
I feel you've just triggered something about activism there in what you're saying.
Could you share about
the Camino?
Yeah.
The Caministas, I think many of them are here as well tonight. And later on we're going to meet the Coat of Hopes, who was a fellow pilgrim along the way. And of course, a Camino of 500 miles. Some of the people here have walked that 500 miles. We were all the time reaching out through the communities that we were passing and listening and gathering the stories along the way. And the Coat will tell her own story. But the thing that hit me, which just ties in with what I think you've been saying, is a quality of grieving. And I don't mean that in a morose way. But for myself on this Camino, the thing that I hadn't expected to happen, because in a sense the intent was shared by many. We were sharing our intent to walk to Glasgow. What I didn't know would happen was that I would break my heart. And that it was the breaking of my heart on this journey that would enable the magic and a transformation to happen. And that meant that as we were listening, you're talking about the listening, really, really listening. So not thinking, what am I going to say next? But really listening. People can deny what's happening, the reality. People can be fearful of what's happening. But people also need to grieve, because there is so much, in a sense, of the loss in an existential way. That's what I feel. So enabling these stories, enabling the listening to happen is, I think, for me as an activist, one of the most powerful things that we can do, as you said earlier, without judgment. People need to be able to go through a process at this moment in time of listening and engaging with their own stories and the story of the planet. There's one thing I will just say very briefly about the Camino, because I think it's really funny, is that I set off at New Year saying, I'm going to go on this, I'm going to walk to Glasgow on my own. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, I look now at all my Caminista friends, and it's like, I can't get my way, to Mansfield sort of thing, But anyway, so it was months later that I discovered that the Camino existed. But in order to justify my journey as a theatre maker, I put an application into the Green Zone that I would make a piece of theatre about an old crone who walks on her own, gathering the stories and whatever. But the real magic of this was, of course, the fact that it was the collective experience. It was the collective making of that piece of theatre when we finally arrived to Glasgow. And it goes on. With these wonderful people, we're still making theatre. We're still making sense, searching for the meaning of what we're doing. And I think that shift from the sense of being the individual to the sense of what we can do collectively is also where our power and the joy and the celebration exists in terms of the process as well. Is that okay? Did I go on too long?
No, beautiful, beautiful.
Okay.
Paul, in the show that I saw today that was really compelling, there was the writer talked about care and how it all came about through being first generation British, mum Nigerian. I can't care. I've got this, I've got that. And just this whole notion of caring being nominal, being I will do it, but I will collect my receipts. You know, that was a misquoted line from...
But that it's transactional.
Yes.
I think the language that's used around the climate crisis is very transactional. And it's very cold, and it's very, therefore, weirdly unemotional. Mm-hmm. So, therefore, it's unemotional, therefore we don't buy into it, therefore we don't believe it. Collectively, we deny it in so many ways. Of course, we don't deny the impact, but actually, to be able to change and to be able to collectively help and make a difference, we don't buy into because of the language that's used. It's confrontational. So this brilliant young artist, Adeola Yemetin, first generation Nigerian, as you say, Harley, she created a piece of work separate to the climate crisis, and I saw that she had a real gift of telling a story and a narrative physically and emotionally, and said, would you do something for COP26? And she hadn't really thought about the climate crisis at all. And she said, I always go to my mum and I'd say, what do you think? And she said, well, if it's hot, we need the sun, and if it rains, it's wet, and we need the rain. And that's that. And there are other things to deal with, there are other things to care about. And we're very, sadly, prescriptive in our divisions in our society here in this country, where we go, generationally, it's your problem. Generationally, they're the ones that are angry the most, they're the ones that will fix it, they're the ones that will care. Actually, they don't care as much as they do care. There's just as many people that don't care about it because they haven't got the agency or the collective responsibility to make the difference. And that was what was so great about this performance, and her script was very much about, actually, don't make it my problem that I should therefore care. You can't force it. She's very honest about it. Of course she cares. Of course there's eco-anger out there. Of course we're very frustrated, all of us are. But don't dismiss the value of care and make it generational and make it just other. And I think that's wrong. And yes, there are people that dismiss it. And I think she was very honest, and it was funny as well. And what we pointed out was that world leaders have lost the ability to storytell, have lost the ability to connect to an articulation and make an impact in the room. We don't believe them. And young people certainly don't believe them. Just to be generalistic then, having said you shouldn't be, I just am, but they really don't. So therefore they don't care because they don't trust. And I think we go back to storytelling, we go back to telling the truth and digging deep. And there is this vacuum of stories, there is this vacuum of trust, and I think the art of storytelling and being true to the emotion of it is the only way that people will care and people will make the change. So it's really, it's fascinating, but there is such an endemic there of a lack of trust. You know, it's a pandemic of trust. It's a broken world in that respect. And what you're doing, and I've heard your story, I've heard the media pick it up beautifully this week, is amazing because you're walking the wall. I call it walking the wall. You're walking the pain. You're physicalizing it in a way that shares it out. And by doing so, you breathe out. And when you breathe out, you've got room to take in. You know, it's a wonderful, simple exercise. It's yogic, but it's absolutely important. And I think you've got the right route to it. And Adeola Yemetin is absolutely the same. She's now empowered to make a difference. because we listened to her saying, actually, I don't care. And I think, again, it's okay to be honest about it.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, I can't fix this. I don't know how to do it. So, it's about being honest.
Zainab, can I bring in your project, which is Tell Mother?
Call your mother.
Call your
yeah,
mother.
Of course. So a force of nature, as I said earlier, we really believe that mobilizing mindsets is at the core of solving the climate crisis. And something that you touched upon earlier when it comes to young people I'm going to talk about something, I guess, around force of nature and then introduce what Call Your Mother is. So young people are often left out of those conversations, unfortunately. And we believe that young people's voice is really crucial to solving the climate crisis, because as young people, we have this certain naivete. We are really hopeful about the future. We dream and we are really passionate about what a better tomorrow can look like. And we believe at Force of Nature that there's power in intergenerational collaboration, because working together, so like when you look at the climate crisis, there's a lot of polarization. A lot of people,
That's right.
A lot of people see themselves as part of this, and it's us and them, and we develop this narrative of it's either me and you, and we're not together in this. But at the end of the day, we're all living under this one earth. We're all sharing the same earth, and we're all fighting for the same causes. So might as well work together. That's why we believe that it's really important to include young people's voices, because we are hopeful and we know it's our future that's being decided when we think of it. It's my tomorrow that's being decided, and it's the tomorrow of all of those young people. So including them is crucial, but not only including them as a tokenization where we're giving them just a mic, but we also want to give them a platform. We want not only to give them the mic, but we want to listen to them when they're given the mic. We want to give them a seat at the table when the decisions are being made. We want to really include their voices in the decision-making spaces. And that's why I believe that a lot of young people are angry at these corporate leaders, because we're not listened to, we're not included in those spaces. For example, COP is really inaccessible to a lot of people. A lot of people from around the world cannot be here today, and it's privileged to be here today, because a lot of people can be here because of funding, because of vaccine needs, because of simply visas. And when you think of it, it's really sad, because we're always designing a future for the most privileged. We're not thinking about the least privileged. We're not thinking about the communities that are most affected by the climate crisis. We're not thinking about the frontline communities who have been affected by the climate crisis, and who are the ones leading the movement for years, and who have been fighting for this for years. So I really totally agree with you that in order for us to solve the climate crisis, we need to get to work as one. And in corporate leaders always forget that aspect of storytelling. So when you look at the media, there's a lot of climate doomism. We talk a lot about the bad sides of the climate crisis. We'll tend to fall into this narrative that we need to give this up, we need to do this and that. But in reality, we need to shape it from a hopeful narrative, because hope is a verb. Hope is practiced every single day. Every single day when you wake up, you need to be hopeful. You need to imagine and allow yourself to imagine a better and brighter future, because we can and we will build that future. And to introduce what Call Your Mother is, so at Force of Nature, we just launched a campaign called Call Your Mother, and it's a safe space for all to share about our climate emotions. We want to create a safe space for everyone to find power in their vulnerability, to find power in that suffering, as we were talking about earlier, because life is made of ups and downs, and it's not always beautiful. It cannot always be pink. It cannot always be beautiful. It's through that suffering that you realize that there's beauty in that pink, there's beauty in that happiness, and that's how you appreciate it. And through Call Your Mother, we create a safe space for young people and for everyone really to have these conversations, to dare to ask yourself, how am I feeling today? How does the climate crisis make me feel? And if you're not feeling okay, that's totally normal. It's a sign that you care. If you're feeling eco-anxious, it's a sign that you care about the climate crisis. It's a sign that you are human and that you care for our world. And there's power in that. It means that you are connected to yourself, to others, and to Mother Nature. So Call Your Mother is, we have a beautiful phone booth that we have all around Glasgow. So we had it, yesterday we had it at the New York Times Climate Hub. We have it also at the University of Glasgow, so at the Queen Margaret Student Union. And hopefully we are currently sourcing voices of young people from around the world and telling their stories, amplifying their narratives, because we believe that everyone should be represented and everyone should be given the mic, everyone should be listened to, because this is not only about statistics. Behind each number there is a story, and behind all the numbers of young people that are affected by this crisis, there's a story, and those people need to be given a platform.
They do. They do. Would you like to share your poem?
One of the poems. Oh gosh, I'm not usually very good, but I've got my phone. High tech. This was a poem that a caminista called Jo, who wrote to share with us as her experience, and it picks up absolutely in a way the heart, I think, of what you're saying is that we don't travel alone. The illusion of our separateness. And it is beautiful. When you are alive with wonder and your heart takes off with the herons, let us celebrate your soaring joy. My friend, let us walk a while together. When your feet are heavy with clay, let me tread you a firm path. Rest is not far from here. My friend, let us walk a while together. When in the silence there is space for grief to swell in your chest, let me honor your tears. I know they have purpose. My friend, let us walk a while together. When the vibrations of each step shake old worries to the surface, invite them to lunch. We will listen with kind ears. My friend, let us walk a while together. When you are dirty and tired and hungry, and there are still many more miles to go, let our jokes fuel you like ripe blackberries for the picking. Let our laughter spill over the hedgerows. My friend, let us walk a while together. When the day's decisions leave you rustling in your sleeping bag, and you would have done it differently, we know the choices were hard. We know the goodness of your intention. Let our reassurance stick. My friend, let us walk a while together. When you can sense danger ahead, but its form remains foggy and unclear, stay close to us. We'll cross as one. My friend, let us walk a while together. When you do not yet have the words for how you feel, take your time. There is no rush. Trust grows at its own pace. My friend, let us walk a while together. When a conversation with a stranger holding a crumpled leaflet fills you with hope, let me be the archive for your action. May your action inspire my next move. My friend, let us walk a while together. And when life calls you home and your heart is tearing, leave a little part of it with us and take us home with you. My friend, let us walk a while together. Jo Bennett Brown.
Beautiful. So I loved what you said, Zainab, about hope being a verb. So I would like to invite you at home and those of you here to share your hopes. What's the world going to look like? In our hearts, what do we want to create? What do we want to make from this chaos? What are the connections that we can form? What will things look like? if we come from this place of all potential in a single instant can manifest when we're curious and excited and engaged and interested, when we're forces of destiny and forces of nature. Sorry, that was an old band. It suddenly came into my head. So we're going to play some music, and please share with your neighbour what your dream is. What's the world going to look like for you? Gorgeous. Thank you. So in reimagining a new future, getting past the blah, 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 and connecting from the heart, I was thinking about, you were telling me about a story that you'd written, And even just, maybe you could share the process of writing it and what...
Okay, well, this is a story of dancing naked in the garden, so maybe maybe I won't share the whole story. But it was that sense of, when I was writing it, I mean, it was called Mrs. Mundy, and it came to me just sitting at the kitchen table one day. But I think the process of writing the story was really about casting off all the artificial forms, all the roles we play, all the things that we do that cover our reality. That's really what the story was about. So Mrs. Mundy eventually casts off all her clothes and goes and dances naked in the garden. Yes. But Mr. Grubb, one of the neighbours, is watching from behind the curtain. Anyway, she gets arrested and all sorts of things happen. But in the end, you know, the husband recognises the naked goddess. So it was a bit of a story, but it was really a metaphor to me for the way that we do sometimes cover up how we're feeling. We cover up, and I just had a lovely conversation there with Zineb where she was saying that, you know, that sense of it's okay to be grieving, and it's, you know, to always have a positive attitude or to be out there thinking everything's all right. It's just not real. And I remember when my mum died, and I felt such intense grief, and a friend said, "Oh, you are so lucky to feel that intense grief." I thought, she's a nutcase. What does she mean? And she says the intensity of your grief demonstrates the intensity of the love that you feel or you felt for your mum, you know. So, and it's that, I think the intensity of the grief we feel for what's happening to the planet is a reflection of the love that we have for this incredible, beautiful, beautiful earth. And I was thinking, Harley, when you mentioned the Pacific and Pacific leaders, and I spent 5 years on a Pacific island. Yeah, lucky me. On the island of Samoa, actually. And I remember within a very short time of being there, feeling I had come to the land of the living, you know, and that I had left the land of the dead. And I mean, that sounds a very harsh thing to say about our life and our culture, but I mean, here there's so much, you know, cement and buildings and sort of a physicality that is not just nature. But on Samoa, everywhere was just verdant and flourishing and alive and natural, and there wasn't stuff. There was just, you know, people, connection, and life. And actually leaving that after 5 years and coming back was a process of grief. And so there's a real, even if human beings are not aware, if those that are kind of climate deniers or just don't think about it too much, I think if they were able to fall in love with nature, in love with the green spaces, in love with the mountains and the oceans and the, you know, just then the grief would come, you know, and we wouldn't want to continue destroying the earth, because there is something about that cosmic connected experience that you can just sometimes have when you've got a chance to be in nature. And there's lots of people who don't get those chances, you know. I was thinking even, you know, growing up, we didn't spend that much time in nature until probably until my teens. I mean, we were occasionally taken from, and Elgin's a nice little town. I don't mean that it's not, but we were taken in the summer holidays by bus, 6 miles down the road to the beach at Hopeman, and it was like you'd been transformed to a different world altogether. The joy of that. So, yeah, maybe there's something about grief and love and them being two sides of a coin. And the more we can somehow find a way for humanity to be in love with the world and in love with this beautiful planet, maybe then the grief will be equal to that love in some way. So I was thinking again of a something from the Baha'i writings where we were talking about vision for the future. It says, "You're all the leaves of one tree, the waves of one sea, and the flowers of one garden." And I just would kind of like to see all humanity like that, that's what we are. We're one, really, one human race, and we're very connected to nature. And we've severed that connection. We need to get it back, maybe.
We do. We do. I think in lockdown,
Yeah,
there was an
that's right.
opportunity of stillness, wasn't there? Where we could notice and we could listen.
And people slept. I mean, in London, I live in London, I live in the centre of London, and people found sleep for the first time in years.
Oh,
And to begin with, we all felt rather guilty to admit it, you know, and so we all sort of lied about it. It was like the fact you had to lie about sleeping for 8, 9, 10 hours is extraordinary. What culture are we?
yeah.
You know, that was a failure at the very beginning of lockdown. And then it became no, me too. And actually, it's rather great, isn't it? And now there's a resistance. I'm sorry, I'm sure you feel the same way in a way, but we're all trying to hang on to a little bit of that we experienced. Of course, there's a lot of negativity about it for a lot of very unfortunate reasons, but also the positive, we're all trying to hang on to that while also juggling the back to normal scenario. So there's actually, as a result, more anger than there was before lockdown, because the energy's shifting and it's in conflict. And we're not happy at all. I mean, London is not a happy place. And because also we can hear the planes again. We've lost sight, or we can't hear the birds as much. We're not as nice to each other again. You know, it's gone. That community, we were just talking about it, that sense of immediate community and talking to one's neighbours is dissipating again. And if we can't talk to our local community, we can't heal the planet, as you've said so eloquently, all of you. So, yeah, I think I really miss elements of lockdown. I was living with an ex-husband who forced me to live upstairs. It was a lot of emotional trauma going on, but you know what? I look back and I think that was quite a happy time. So, it shows you what shit I'm in now. But I mean, it was extraordinary. So there was peace in that still. In that conflict, there was peace. It was great. Yeah.
It's the space between, isn't it?
It is the space.
Creating those pauses for reflection. And I love this hope is active. And it feels like the them and us. What if they are me? What if there is here? When we start to change our lens, it is taking a leap of faith. It is trusting in something. You trusted in your feet.
Trusted in my feet. There's something going on underneath here that I feel I need to say, and I can't quite get my hands on it. It's to do with the privilege of story, and also we're talking about the sense that we're living in a time also where the dystopias, there's this sort of apocalyptic story that is also being generated by the reality that we're living in. Sorry, did you mind?
Yeah.
I suddenly sort of felt myself jumping into sort of the nightmare, question, which is, and there's something that wants to go with that walking, taking that next step, is that feeling that we're existing within a normalization of stories, whether they be defined, like you say, by the Protestant ethos that, we have to work, time has to be this way, and, a sort of patriarchal system that is so endorsed, the stories are there, rooted in terms of the normalization of the world that we live in, is that there's something also about shaking stories. Stories are human-made. And we can recreate, we can transform these stories, we can challenge the stories. And then there's all these stories that we can't hear. There's stories from the other side of the world, there's stories from Africa, there's stories from who they don't have access. We've got media, we're sitting here, we've got microphones, we can give voice. How do we really think, if we're talking on that community, that collective scale, for me, there's that feeling that wants to crack things open, because we've got to hear the stories from all over the world. You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel privileged to be able to talk about wanting to connect with nature and myself, but I feel like we've somehow, part of this question of storytelling is about outreach and enabling voice, you know, from what you were saying, that force of nature. And yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say that, because I think we can all do that. We can reach beyond our comfort zones and be ready to be challenged in our stories.
And
Yeah.
Indigenous people, I think, as well, are
Yes.
storytellers. And, you know,
Yes.
being in Samoa, their stories, in fact, they had the whole culture was, you know, the people that were most valued were the storytellers. And in fact, a storyteller from Scotland, Robert Louis Stevenson, they call him Tusitala, died in Samoa. And that Tusitala is the teller of stories, you know, the storyteller. And so these Indigenous voices, and you're so right, they need to be heard, because they tell the stories of the natural
And they
world.
shift our
Yeah.
lens, don't they?
Yeah, they shift our lines. That's so right, yeah.
And just to jump on that, I definitely agree with what you brought up. I think that now with the climate crisis, we've shaped this narrative that we're all doomed, that there's no way out. And when you read the headlines, you only read about the negative things that are happening. You only read about the floods in Germany. You only read about the fires in California, but you never read the stories of the frontline communities that are doing work. You never hear about the change makers and the activists, for example, in Nigeria, that are doing the work every day. You never hear about the scientists that are doing the research. And I think that the media has failed to tell the story of the climate crisis. We failed to tell the stories of hope. We failed to tell the stories of the action that's being done, because we're always focused on what we've lost, but we've never focused on what we're doing and the change that's being happening now on the ground. We never tell the stories of hope. We only shape it from a narrative of all the bad things that are happening, but we never see it from the narrative of all the good that's also happening in the world. Because as much as there's a climate crisis, there's also a lot of action being taken, and a lot of people are taking the streets. A lot of people are doing things that are taking action, and a lot of people, it starts, as we said earlier, it starts within you, and it starts, I believe that it starts also at the dinner table. It's the conversations that you have at the dinner table with your family. It's the conversations that you have with a friend. It's through recycling, through the small actions, we can see the bigger picture. And when you look at it from a bigger picture, it's the micro that matters. It's not only the big corporate leaders that are taking action, but it's also normal people that are changing the world. It's building a movement comes from us. Building a movement starts with all of us.
And corporates follow us because
Exactly.
they're trying to sell us something. So that's our people power. One of the signs at the rally. Sorry, I went to the Green Zone today, and it was a bit like I probably shouldn't say an ideal home exhibition. Yes, I found it really, really challenging, having come through Kelvin Grove with these beautiful autumn leaves and the trees dancing, and then circles of drummers and families and people moving through, and the flow of people. It was just, it's like the heart, the beating heart was missing. And so I would like to really welcome the Coat of Hopes. I would love you to meet the Coat of Hopes. Have your heart broken and re-put together, filled with joy and stardust.
Just a minute.
Ever northward to Glasgow, both worn and walked I'll be, upon the back of anyone who'll choose to carry me. Through field, village and city, day by day, from town to town, to where leaders are gathering like rooks before the storm. Ask me where I'm going. Ask me what is my purpose. Ask me what my name is. They call me the coat of hopes. What is it that I'm taking to the ones who will decide if as a world we'll do all in our power to survive? Only pieces of blanket I've collected on my path, with griefs, hopes, prayers, remembrances for the lands through which I've passed. Ask me where I'm going. Ask me what is my purpose. Ask me what my name is. They call me the coat of hopes. So here's my invitation, come and make me who I'll be. Come mark your hopes on blanket and I'll sew them into me. A coat that's made by everyone, for everyone to wear. To feel my warmth and the weight of responsibility we share. Ask me where I'm going. Ask me what is my purpose. Ask me what my name is. They call me the coat of hopes.
Barbara, that was absolutely delicious.
Tell us the story now.
Great.
Behold the coat of hopes. I'm very unused to having a microphone. I must say, every day since our arrival in Glasgow, we have walked from St George's Tron Church in the centre to the turnstiles in the blue zone of the blue zone, and sung this song several times on the way. In fact, I think we've decided we probably sang the song over 50 times today. And then I declare with all my might our invitation to the decision makers in the blue zone to put on this coat. This is the invitation, but let me tell you about the coat. This coat has walked here from the south coast of England over 9 weeks, about 900 kilometres. And when it started out, it had no patches on. It was a blank coat, and it wasn't as long as it is now either. And all along our way, we've gathered these pieces of blanket into which people have sewn or marked or embellished in one way or another their griefs, their remembrances, their prayers and their hopes for their local landscape, the place where they live, in the face of climate breakdown. And on our way, hundreds of people have worn this coat. They've worn it to walk in, and sometimes we've passed them outside their houses and they've shuffled out in their slippers and put the coat on. Or 12-year-old boys just coming out of school have stood and sort of looked like there's no way any of them are going to put that coat on. And then just one of them says, all right. And once one has put it on, every one of them will put it on once the ice is broken. And that's been the same outside the blue zone, actually. Because I declare this invitation with great force, echoing my voice as best I can off the building opposite. And that's quite a daunting thing to step into and put this coat on. But today we had such an incredible time outside the blue zone with delegate after delegate, person after person on their way in, putting this coat on, and some dancing and some weeping. And I mean, it was like a very, very deep prayer. And after this very loud singing, to create that space for somebody to come in and put the coat on, then all the voices die away and I just sing very quietly, just close by them. So it feels like there's not many people here, I'm just singing to you. And then gradually, as more people put the coat on, then the song builds again. And then through the march today, we've sung it and sung it and sung it. I can't tell you. And here's our invitation, our sewn invitation, which is sewn on linen from Sussex nettle fibre. That's upside down that way, but it says, this is our invitation, which we'd have liked to get into the blue zone, but I think that may prove impossible. It says, outside is a coat of blanket patches, made, worn, and walked here by hundreds of people over hundreds of miles. This is an invitation to you to put on this coat of hopes, to honour their effort, and in kinship with all life. So I extend that invitation to all of you who are here this evening as well. I can move off the stage into the space, and as many as want to can come and put the coat on. I think one of the things I've learnt is not to sing the whole song to every person, each person, when there's a very large number of people. So what we will probably do is sing the song on, and as the song is sung, person after person can come and step into the coat and wear the coat. So that's what I invite you to do. I feel like there's a lot of things I haven't said, but maybe it's just best to come and feel what this coat does now.
How does it feel for you now?
It just feels so full. I still look at it and see patches I've never seen before. And quite often we get emails where somebody says, I've looked at the photos of the coat and I can't see my patch on it. And then you have to sort of spread the thing out, and you've got their little photo of their patch, and every time it's always on there. It's always there. We haven't lost any patches. But it's so full of stories, this coat. There's patch, there's a patch which a woman told me she's sewn her hair into. She had chemotherapy, she lost her hair, and she'd been keeping her hair for a long time, and she didn't know what to do with it. She was going to make something special with it. And then when she made her patch, she said, I sewed some of my hair into it, and then I was able to burn the rest and let it go, because I knew that hair had found the place it needed to be. And on it goes, the wool from the grandmother's basket who's died, and the bridesmaid dresses from the wedding that didn't happen, and the richness, the depth. If you look on the website, I mean, they're not all on there yet, but the process is underway that every patch is in a gallery with the words that people have supplied with them. And it's a lot of people will say, I don't think I'm worthy to put the coat on. And I feel like that too. But nobody is worthy to put the coat on, but everybody is welcome to put the coat on. And in fact, what the coat is creating is a kind of space where you can step into being the protagonist in the story. You're the hero in the climate breakdown story. You can hold all these hopes, all these griefs, all these remembrances and prayers. And that's what we all need to step into, every person. And that's why everyone is invited to put the coat on. And I've seen that happen. So often you put the coat on somebody and they seem to grow and kind of fill it and become something. It's like you've got this little self, and then you've got this other self which is able to be almost archetypal. And it allows you to step into that and maybe hold those two things together. I think that's why people cry sometimes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's so beautiful. Well, what a beautiful, beautiful evening. I'd like to thank Paul and Tanya and Zainab and Joe and Maureen and Carolyn and Anne and all of you. Hold on to your stories and share them. Share, and listen. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Woohoo!
So, you're welcome now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's just
It's
beautiful.
really beautiful. Thank you. Hello, Doggy.
I thought you'd gone. Didn't see you there. It's really weird, I think.
This is for you.
Oh my God.
It's a little shell shaker.
Oh.
So it's like they're abandoned homes. And then we put them together and they make something that we can
That's beautiful.
And you made something happen to
No, you did. No, it's just a cynical one in the corner. It's great. Beautiful. It's so strong, isn't it? That? It's a great image as well.